Chapter 5. "What up, good brother?" Steve Salas asked as I sat on a bar stool at Brewbaker's, a brew pub on Main Street. "Still saving lives?" Steve was a big, barrel-chested man in his early 30s, with a braided ponytail halfway down his back, a knitted Jamaican beanie, sharp eyes behind small rectangular glasses, and enormous forearms and hands. His laugh resonated in bursts. His curiosity, smile, physical presence, and penetrating wit had made me like him the first time we met, which was exactly where we were now. "The big hippie," I called him. He was a bear of a man emanating genuine affection for his closest friends, and frank but respectful, good nature to those who weren't. Steve was the local source for the best marijuana. He dealt it secretly, and not so secretly, out of the back door of the restaurant to supplement his meager hourly income that percolated with the occasional massive tip, indicating either great service, a very drunken customer he'd put away laughing, or repayment for a fronted baggie when the customer didn't have the cash he needed out back. Steve was a natural businessman, savvy about people, and commanded respect by sheer force of good-natured personality and crisp attention. He had hired me twice for DUIs. The first included felony possession of a butterfly knife. I got the felony dismissed in exchange for an early plea to the low-alcohol DUI because he had no priors. The second DUI, several years later, happened during the lunch hour by Redwood High School. He'd clipped a student's bumper in an intersection when the student hit the brakes to catch his phone falling off the seat. Steve had drank 2 pints with his early lunch at work. He was breath-tested an hour and 15 minutes after the collision. By then, his blood alcohol had risen to a .08. I continued the case for 2 years, trying to get it dismissed. Then, 3 times we showed up for trial and got bumped because someone in custody hadn't waived their right to a speedy trial and were set on the same day. The DA continued the trial twice because their investigating officer was out on training. We didn't care. The judge was relaxed about giving long continuances, and even though Steve had defenses, DUIs are hard to win. "The longer it takes, the better," I kept telling Steve. Finally, after 5 years and 4 months, the longest continuance of any DUI in Tulare County history, the DA dismissed. Steve was ecstatic. He praised my legal skills. The truth was, we spent more time in court than he ever would have in jail. "I'm having a strange day," I said. "Oh? Everything okay?" he asked, setting a pint of IPA in front of me. "You all right?" "I had a new murder case in court today. It's different." Steve turned and gave me his complete attention. "Uh-oh." I raised my eyebrows and took a sip of beer. "You know I'm here for you, brother man," he said, rapping his knuckles on the counter. "You need any food? Salmon?" he asked, anticipating my needs like only the best bartenders and waitresses do. "It's that woman they found in Exeter on Christmas." "Navarro?" Steve asked, surprised. "You know about it?" "It was in the paper. I know the dad. He does painting." Steve paused, surveying the bar to see if anyone was listening. "He's a competitor, if you know what I mean." "He sells weed?" I asked quietly. "Oh, yeah. And more." That's interesting. The money reeked when I got hired. I thought it was the brother. They both do. The father and the oldest. I don't know about the younger one. I met that guy once when he was working with his dad. He's a strange dude." "Yeah, he's different. That's my client. Why would you be in contact with the father? Business?" "No, he was painting the house of this girl I was banging. I said hello and tried to talk to his son. He was standing around like tripping. Started telling me some wild shit. I was like, 'Whatever, man,'" Steve laughed. "So the dad, how do you know?" "Dad and the older son, Vic. That's the word around a small town." "What's the read?" "Mexico, big loads." "Meth?" I asked. Steve nodded. "I didn't get that impression. The brother seemed all right. Then again, I'm the lawyer. They all treat me well." "The new priesthood, coming out, guns blazing," he quoted Al Pacino in Devil's Advocate. It was a trait I enjoyed in Steve. We were movie quoters. "Hoo-yah," I responded with Scent of a Woman. "Saw my ex in the elevator. Had to have 2 spritzers just to settle down. He came back with Donny Brasco. I gotta know, how did you know that was a fugazi? Oh, I got cancer at a prick. You didn't know? Yeah. I'm into medical books. Forget about it. Steve smiled, motioning he had another customer. What can I get you? He asked the approaching man. Someone said you could change a 50. I only have 20s, Steve said, scanning the bar. Yeah, that works, the man replied. Let's do this quick. I'll be right back, Jack, Steve said. He disappeared down the hall to the back door. I took a drink and thought about the new information. Drug-dealing family. Was this case going to be seasoned with Mexican cartel? I wondered. They didn't seem like local gang. There were no tattoos or any indications of association. I hadn't clued into anything serious going on except marijuana sales. The crime scene photos showed the parents lived in a very modest house consistent with being a part-time painter. The defendant and his wife lived in a simple shed behind the parents. That was subsistence-level money. The father seemed proud, looking out for his severely bent son, not someone I would have associated with the meth trade or even padding a painting estimate too much. Then again, father had to do with family, not crime. Criminals felt parental obligations as deeply as non-criminals. Steve said it was rumor. Maybe it was the brother, not the father. I hadn't seen the older brother's house. He had a pretty white girlfriend. Maybe he was sporting some cash to attract her, or she might just be doing her bad boy thing until she wised up or her looks faded. God forbid she got pregnant. Then her whole family would take a stunting blow to the DNA belt, adding the Navarro's broken genes to their family tree. What a mess, I thought. It reminded me how lucky I was to have my girls, and they their mom. A hard slap on my back broke my concentration. What up, Shield? I checked my inclination to turn and face the affront. I could tell from the voice who it was. I took a sip of my beer. What the fuck, Pete? Pete was a tall, 38-year-old loner who had known Steve since they were kids. He sometimes made the rounds at happy hour when he had cash. There were a lot of stories about Pete. Most ended with people shaking their heads saying, fuck. He hardly worked, but when he did, it was odd jobs, and sometimes as a gardener labourer for a friend of mine, Raymond Velasquez. Ray had fired Pete at least 24 times, but usually he didn't have to. Pete would quit after an hour or two or break the equipment he was using so he could stop. He didn't have his own place. He couch-surfed wherever he could till he got kicked out or snuck into his mom's one-bedroom assisted living after midnight because her facility didn't allow overnight guests. I turned. The place had filled to standing room. Pete was wearing a knee-length faux fur coat that he was very happy about. He'd obviously started drinking well before stumbling into me. "Pete Loaf," Steve called out from the far side of the bar. "Indoor voice. Be cool or you're out." "Yeah, man. Sorry. Pete trailed. "Just saying hi to my buddy." He gestured at me. "You're bothering my friend. Get back upstairs. I'll send you another beer. I'm not kidding, man. Settle down." "Yeah, Steve, it's cool," Pete said. "Sorry, Shield." He dodged his way through the downstairs crowd, hovering now and then, trying to make eye contact with anyone. His coat and ambling movements only drew strange glances and turned backs as he reached the stairs and started climbing them, holding the banister. "You sure he needs another beer, Steve?" I asked. "I know, man. He doesn't get out much. He's all right. I give him too many chances. He can be a fucking idiot. I'll keep him up there. He'll head home in a bit." Steve poured a pint of lager. "Erin!" he called to a cute, blonde, short-haired barmaid. "Will you bring this to Pete upstairs? He's a little overserved. Cut him off after this one. I've got the tab." "Sure, Steve," Erin replied. She wiggled through the crowd and grabbed the beer, putting it on her tray with some other glasses, then headed towards the stairs, holding her tray one-handed above her head. She was perky and had a tight figure. Steve watched as she walked away, then saw me watching him. "What can I say? I'm a man," he laughed. I spread my arms apart, fingers wide, saying, "'Cause she's got a great ass," mimicking coked-up Pacino in Heat. Steve raised his hands into the air, dancing. "Where you from, baby? Louisiana? Baltimore?" he said in his best Scarface. "What the fuck?" a woman yelled as clattering chairs and breaking glass erupted to my right. Pete hadn't made it upstairs. He was falling backwards across a downstairs table, scattering the glasses and plates on its occupants. Two large men lunged at him from the furthest corner booth about 50 feet from me. Instantly, the capacity crowd backed away, squeezing all the space out between them. I saw the tray Erin was holding topple into the crowd as she was swallowed in the confusion. The falling beers caused another wave of motion. Suddenly, the press of bodies trying to stabilize or get out of the way brought screams and pandemonium as a domino of people fell away from the crush. "Everybody be cool," Steve's booming voice resonated. "Call 911, someone yelled as people behind me bumped and charged for the exit. Steve ran to the edge of the bar nearest the fight and climbed up. "Pete!" he screamed. "Pete!" The dull sounds of fists on flesh punctuated the crowd noise and breaking furniture. Steve leapt off the bar towards the three fighting men as the crowd thinned. Slipping off my stool, I pressed towards the fight. Steve tried to push Pete away with one hand while pushing another man away with his other. It was like Steve was at the center of a human wishbone trying to break it apart from the inside. He didn't get his wish. Pete was red-faced, frothing spit and blood from his heaving mouth, storming through Steve to get to the other guy. That guy, with his right fist fully cocked, tried to punch Pete, but missed, hitting Steve. Steve's upper lip went left while his bottom lip and chin went right, and his glasses went straight up. His eyes were closed. I jumped, grabbing that man from behind, my right arm around his neck, yelling, "Hey, enough! Stop!" He raised his left fist back quickly, catching me squarely in the mouth with a solid wham! "Motherfucker!" I winced at the pain and used my right arm to try to pull his forehead back to redirect him. "Stop! I'm not fighting you!" I yelled. Unfortunately, I wasn't on my feet. He was well over 6 feet. As he turned, my dangling legs hit tables, chairs, and anyone in range. He flung me over his shoulder, beyond Steve's collapsed body, onto Pete, who was now on his back, with the second guy under him, arms around Pete's neck in a chokehold. That man screamed at Pete, "You're dead, asshole!" I saw Visalia police pushing the crowd apart, throwing furniture to the side to clear a path. Pete gasped and blew a bloody wad of spit that caught me across the left side of my face and neck as he struggled. "Oh, yeah!" he screamed, punching backwards with his elbow. With each forward thrust to recock, he punched me in my ribs. I was yanked up by black uniformed officers and thrown onto my chest nearby. My arms were pulled tightly behind my back. Then there was a clicking sound and sudden excruciating pain in my wrists as I was handcuffed. "Hey, guys!" I yelled. "I was breaking it up!" I tried to look backwards, but a knee between my shoulder blades pressed down so hard I couldn't turn my head. Suddenly I was having a hard time breathing.